Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, all the stuff, share. Really excited for our guests today, Robyn and Clint Pigeon. They're Alberta people too, so that's exciting. And they met, and we'll get into how they met because I think that's kind of fun. And they met, and then they started a business like a year later, and that they've been running ever since. And they have a podcast which you should check out. But kind of crazy. So let's start with how you guys met, and then fast forward into deciding it was a great idea as a newly married together couple to start a business together and try not to kill each other. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so the story of us meeting is actually a fun one, and I have a fun memory when it comes to numbers. So we met April 4th, 2012, and it was an interesting meeting, and Clint and I tell it slightly different. So I'm actually going to let Clint tell the story because I have a tendency to cut out the details that I don't want included. So with the story.
Okay. So Cole's notes, I was coming back from firefighting training in Texas. So I was down in Laredo with the TEACS program, doing my training for international firefighting. And a buddy of mine were driving home, and we're like, well, let's stop in Vegas on the way home. Why not? Right? We'll go to Vegas. So we wind up in Vegas, and
I was there for a wedding. I was the maid of honor at a wedding. And the night before the wedding.
Yeah, the night before the wedding, I'm sitting at a roulette table. One of my favorite things to just unwind and is just do math and numbers and spend a little bit of money and probably not get it back.
Sounds smart.
I'm playing roulette, and all I get, and there's no one at the table beside one person at the end, and pink high heels sit down right beside me. Now, hi, I'm Robyn. And I'm like, are you playing or what are we doing here? Right? I'm not interested in the moment. I'm not worried about anything at that moment. She's got a pop champagne in her hand. Ready to go for the wedding and be in Vegas.
Just having fun.
This wedding.
Lo and behold, I end up going to the wedding. So
I'm very convincing.
Good job.
As an additional +1. So basically I crashed a wedding in Vegas.
Wow.
To I don't even know why. I guess we kind of
I can't remember. That was 10 years ago. But at the end of the day, we ended up chatting all night, and we were honest with one another. We're like, so when we get home, we should reach back out to each other and see if we actually like one another, or if this is just the Vegas experience. So we touched base with one another when we got home.
After
later.
you had to, you bribed me to get my phone number. I was like, I'm good.
You're persuasive, not a girl.
Don't tell my secret. Anywho, we ended up connecting on a lot of levels because we have both run our own businesses and started dating, and then ultimately running our own businesses, we weren't seeing each other as often as, well, I wanted to. I can't speak for you, but we weren't seeing each other as often as we wanted. So we decided to start something together. And now fast forward 9 years later, we have this beautiful business that's growing, and we have 9 people that help us make our dreams a reality. And we're just here crushing it every day.
It was an accidental business too. We both had Robyn. I was doing contracting work since I was 17 for acreages and farm development, fencing and outbuildings, things like that. So it was kind of a natural progression where I was like, well, people like what we're building inside of a 10 by 10 box in a townhouse.
Yeah.
Just a tiny little wood shop. We were kind of just doing little things, and it was an accident, really.
Yeah, it was an accident that we just kind of went with.
Yeah. Pretty much, because Robyn's an equine chiropractor.
Yeah, like my first business, like I was an equine sports therapist. So I traveled all around North America, like with the show jumping circuit, and worked on horses, and just like horses was my life and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, the life that I wanted for myself wasn't like chaotic and traveling around and living out of a suitcase. I wanted a little bit of a home base, and I also wanted to be inside. Yeah. So it was.
So in the meeting, you guys missed this part, which I think if anyone caught this, it's really cool because things happen. We manifest things. And obviously, there was a manifestation that happened here because these people met in Vegas, but they're both from Alberta. Like that's not like normal. So, it wasn't like she happened to sit by someone that lived in like Florida. He happened to live in Alberta. Of all the people in Vegas at a roulette table, there's a lot of manifestation happening here.
And we live like half an hour away from each other.
Even more manifestation or creepy, depends on how you look at it. We're going to go with manifestation.
So manifestation, not creepy.
Less stalkerish. More intentional.
Who followed who to Vegas? How did this happen? Oh my gosh. I love it. It's so freaking cool. And now, so they run a business called Two Birds because there was a robin and a pigeon and they met. And that's kind of cool. I actually mistakenly called Clint Clay, and he said his parents would not be that mean. Definitely not a Robyn and Clay pigeon. It's a Robyn and Clint pigeon. But they have an amazing podcast too. Like I said, make sure to check it out. So what are some of the challenges that you guys, I'm sure you went through a ton. So what are some challenges and how did you overcome some of the challenges of, starting a business together? If you go back 9 years, tell us some of that.
I think it's different for each of us. So my parents have always worked together. So it was like a natural thing to just have a spouse or a partner that just has the same kind of, we work together. We have the same goals, same kind of drive of what we're trying to do. And luckily it kind of just worked out that Robyn had that same mindset. So for me, it was a natural progression. And I have, I think it was a little bit harder for you. We always talk about this on our podcast, but I have an on and off switch. So when I go into work or into a meeting or whatever we're doing, it's different. It's almost like I switch personalities. I don't know what it is. Robyn calls it the dueling hamsters in our book that we have. So I have like this switch where it's like, well, we're at home. I'm like more like emotionally there. I'm more like, your partner. But when we get into business, it's all logic. Like I'm not there to cuddle your feelings. I'm not that like we're making logical business decisions. So I'm like, it was just there. So I think you should tell that story about that transition for you the first couple of years. And you're just like, oh, I'm going to kill you.
Bus today. This is fun. Okay. So a little bit of my history. I grew up like North American, like traditional family, like both parents were employed by other people. And also love my parents to pieces, but they did not instill the best of communication skills within me. So communication's always been very difficult for me, and I've always been very comfortable in silence. But that is not necessarily the best thing for business and the best thing like for developing a team. So the hardest component for me, like not only like dealing with the separation point with Clint, was actually just learning to communicate individually what I needed. And my body gave me an abrupt alert for when this like was really important to take care of. So what my body did, like once I started getting stressed at the beginning, because once you go from like a sole proprietor into like a small business, like the stress level changes because you're now responsible for other people, other families, all that kind of stuff. And so that was a stress level that I wasn't used to. So what my body decided to do was to start nightly stress vomiting. Which this was my like key to maybe be like, oh, maybe I need to do like a little like soul searching or whatever you want to call it to communicate what I need in order to deal with the stress that I'm facing. So beautiful thing that I maybe didn't recognize the emotions and stuff that was going on, but my body made it very clear that I needed to deal with something. So that was the most difficult thing for me beginning, was learning to communicate and learning to understand what I physically needed prior to going into the business.
And for me, it's understanding that she needs those things, like her communicating that. You can't just silently tell me. I'm not a mind reader, right? I needed to know like why. And okay, how long? And like, it was like, okay, just give me the details. I'm good. I will give you the space. I'll give you whatever you need, but you have to tell me. It's not telepathically. I'm not very good at that.
Yeah, that was the most difficult for me. Yeah.
That was the first couple of years, the big transition of realizing like you've got other people to take care of. Right. It's not just you anymore. You've also got a business partner and a spouse that you're with 24/7. Right. And learning each other's nuances. And we actually did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the conversations we'll have, but Robyn will be sleeping. So she like talk. So we'll have a full conversation, and I'm not real good at having a second conversation about the same thing. I'm like, oh, we just talked about this. Why are we doing this again?
She's like, because I was sleeping and I don't remember talking about it. If you could record the conversation next time, that would be great.
Right? But she did. I didn't realize this. So one of my things is like, we'd have this conversation because I work really good at night.
And I don't.
Like, I'm not a morning person. Like, I'm a diesel. Like, it takes me a while to get like this early one for me. But because of you, I was up at 5 a.m. this morning getting prepared, coffee and everything I could do to be organized. So
I love it.
We'd have these conversations at night but Robyn's brain's not engaged after 9 o'clock. Like, it's like, no, I'm shut down. So we'd have to rehash these conversations in the morning when I'm not functioning. So finding that time to actually have good, solid, intentional
communications period from 1 till 4.
We really had to dial that in, like, to be like intentional and effective and intentional with each other's like nuances, right?
Oh, it's so fun reminiscing about 10 years ago.
So I'm curious now, as you went through some of this, you guys meeting in Vegas, doing all this stuff, how was the family support through all of this?
It was up and down, right?
Yeah.
So I think whenever you start a venture, especially something like, because when we started using like reclaimed wood, like, and building stuff out of it, it wasn't really a thing. People still did it, but barn doors weren't popular. That kind of like rustic Joanna Gaines. I don't know if people know who are listening, like Joanna Gaines kind of style, that shiplap look. It wasn't a thing. So we were kind of making it up on the fly as we were going and kind of adapting to trends and talking to designers and kind of figuring out the product and what needed to be. So I don't think our parents really trusted us. Neither
well, you met in Vegas. Like, I just want to, I'm still going back to this whole Vegas thing. You come home from Vegas and you're like, I met the love of my life. Like, how did all of it go down? Like, sure you did.
Oh, that's so funny.
But
yeah, like the support has gone like in and out over the years. Obviously, because like I come from a very conservative family. They're just like, oh, that's a little risky. That's a little risky.
I just can't imagine you met this boy in Vegas. Now we're opening a business together.
But like, at the end of the day, I think like deep down, my parents weren't that surprised because I like started my first business when I was 12. So I think they always kind of knew that this would happen, but that doesn't mean like they're not going to be concerned or worried. And it comes from a place of love, and they're obviously like super supportive now. And they're always like, they've always been like a really good ear to bounce ideas off of. And yeah. And my parents were the same. Like, they both have worked for other people their whole lives, but mom grew up in an entrepreneur family. Like, my grandfather ran pony barns in Jasper, Alberta. So he did guided tours and backcountry. That's kind of what they did. Her growing up was taking people on tours. So she was already kind of, she understood what I was doing. And she also knew, like, I got sent back to university twice by my dad, right? Like, I'm dropping out. This is dumb. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm dropping out. I can do more things. I don't need to spend this money. I can go and like build my own business. Went back year 3 and 4 because he was like, no, you're going back and you're finishing this. So
oh, Dad.
I had 2 different perspectives, but when we started, I would say like there was a lot of skepticism on one, we're a couple, right? And like investors didn't like anything we pitched. They had all these hesitations and social norms of, oh, you're going to get divorced and this isn't going to work and you guys can't do that. And because I'm stubborn.
And I'm equally as stubborn, maybe a hair more.
We're here to, it's just
you're going to compete against who's more stubborn. Let's stop that now. I can see this going down this.
Compete against everything that keeps it fun.
There's a high level of competition in the relationship. We will say that. But I think after 5 years and people actually seen, so once we moved out of our first bay and paid off our first investor and moved into our bigger facility, and we're working on another facility right now, there was more trust in that we could accomplish it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were more worried that we were going to fail, right? They came from a place of fear that we were going to fail. We were going to have to move in with one of them, and like, oh, all that stuff they're going through. They're like, oh, we just got rid of you. Like,
I don't want to welcome you back at 30.
Right.
Did you find that as you went through some of this stuff, did you find a lot of your friends groups changed?
100%.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And they shrunk.
Well, I think it's because they just don't understand what you're trying to do and why you're putting so many hours in, like why you're sleeping at your facility. Because a lot of us, when we start a small business, like you're trying to do this as cheap as you can, as fast as you can to get operational. So all those things are being like, well, you need to take more downtime. You need to take more of this. It's like, well, I can, and I should. And we've talked about this off there.
Right.
Right. It's just that like mentality. Like I'm like the ego that you have is to prove a point that you can do it, and you're going to outwork them and show the people that you can do it. Mm-hmm. And that's, so yeah, the friend group definitely was a huge pivot. And like, honestly, in the last 2 years, we've seen the most change.
Yeah. Because
we've gone into basically personal development and growth and like trying to be a better humans and better people for our people and learning
better in the community,
just new skills and like trying to build a really nice community that we work and live in. So that really changed because now we've got all these other couples that do the same thing that we can bounce ideas off. You can talk. Because when we first started, there was no information on it. It was like, there's relationship gurus, there's business gurus. They don't really cross-reference each other. Like, yeah, there's tidbits you can take from each of them, but they don't really mix. And so we definitely had pretty big shift. And I think entrepreneurship, like, it can be kind of lonely until you find that group of people that like you connect with.
Mm-hmm. And what are some recommendations that you think would have made things go maybe easier or faster for you?
Oh, hindsight, hey?
Oh, like in relationships with friends and stuff?
Both. Everything. Your relationships and your business, your relationship with each other, you're building the business. Just 9 years is a long time in a business.
Yeah. I think an important one is going back to like being honest with yourself and not letting your ego get in the way. Because at the end of the day, we don't all know everything, and being okay. It would be so cool if we did, but at the end of the day, like being open to that, because especially like once you get into entrepreneurship and like you're seen almost like as a leader in that field, and having the uncertainty of like not knowing anything, sometimes that can be a little bit of like a hit on your ego, and being okay with asking for help. That would be a big one for me. Yeah,
I think for just your average, like everybody else, but you can still be better. You can always grow and be better. To make it easier though, like in business, a lot of it would be taking the time to, and it's an old quote. I think it's Napoleon Hill, about taking time to like concentration on a certain area. And Alex Hormozi talks about it in his book, 20 hours of just solid concentration on a topic, whether it's your financial statements, understanding like where your levers are and how to leverage your EBITDA and like your financial statements. For me, that would be, and I have an accounting degree, so I don't like it. I hate accounting. So like getting and diving into that a little bit deeper and taking the time out of your schedule, and you're like, oh, I need to get this out for this client. I need to build this. I'm trying to provide the best for my client. You forget about the back end a little bit. And if you build the back end up first and take a little more time, just like book that time off more intentionally, to do those, like some people would seem as inefficient or whatever they are. But to me, like those little things now are so much more effective and efficient for growth in your business than they are just trying to pump product out and getting, I think another thing is like know when to hire is another lesson. If we had hired a few people sooner, even though we didn't have enough cash flow, enough money, we probably would be a little bit further ahead than we are now for sure. Just because we were trying to do everything, too many hats, too many things. You're like, oh, I can do it. I'll work 24 hours or whatever.
That goes back to the ego, right?
Just I'm the professionals, getting the professionals. Like we waited a little bit too long to get a bookkeeper, like a couple of years. We should have done it in year one. hiring our accountant was really good in year two. Basically, year two is when we got all our professionals in. And then we've switched up a few, but getting those people in place earlier to help us analyze the back end of the business, whether it's like your procedures and your policies, whatever we're doing. I think that will make things faster for a lot of people, is start at the back end. And also you need to make your product good, but the back end of the business is what's going to push you forward faster.
Well, and this is even something that Clint mentions almost on a daily level. And it's something that Ed Milet actually talks about, is do something that moves the needle every single day. So not necessarily in the business, but on the business every single day.
Yeah. Getting, that was one of the first advice I got is, what can you do in 40 hours? Okay. As an individual. Now compress that and put those 40 hours into one day. How do you get those 40 hours one day? And then you can kind of progress from there. But very simply, I can do so much work on an 8-hour, let's just say an 8-hour day, keep it simple for the math, up to 40 hours. Well, now how do I compress that where I either clone myself or whatever I need to do to compress that 40 hours into one day? And then you've just 5X what you can do. So that's a big one, is just learning then that's where the people come in, and the levers and all the different leverages you can do in business to pull those hours and compress them in a sense.
Something else you mentioned that I'd like to dive into. You mentioned in the last couple of years, you've got into personal development, and that's been a lot of the shifts in your friendships, but I imagine there's been a lot of shifts in your business. What got you into personal development, and how important do you feel that is to successful business?
Well, I'll answer the second part for me.
I'll answer the first part.
Perfect. Teamwork.
The second part for me, it's been like tenfold. One, it's like kind of a hard knocks education, right? Digging into yourself, realizing where your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities might lie, and what threats your personality has. For me, that was it's to grow. It's been essential. But yeah, you answered the first part.
Okay. So the first part, I'm not even going to say it happened by accident, because it was meant to happen. So essentially, beginning of COVID, when there was all the uncertainty, all that kind of stuff, our retail portion of our business was limited. So Clint and I quickly realized that we were only working 40 hours a week, and we don't have children. We don't have any I was going to say home life, but we do have a home life, but we don't have children. So we had some free time. And so at that moment, we actually decided to write a book. So during the process of writing a book, we started to uncover some layers of oh, hey, maybe we need a little bit of help here, or, oh shit, I didn't realize that I did this over here. So it was just a lot of self-reflection time, and then actually taking the time to write it down. And the process of writing a book, you're constantly editing and editing and editing. So that information was constantly in front of our faces. So we're let's work on ourselves.
Yeah, let's dive into that. And then once you dive into that, there's so much information out there. So we kind of dialed into just a few podcast people, just to kind of, because we're always on the road. We got a 40-minute commute. We're in the shop, always doing stuff. So to have a headset on or whatever we're doing, we're always it's easier to listen than it is to read the stuff, just because sitting down and taking that time is not something that we make time for. We need to make more time for it, but we just don't. I do a lot of listening and taking notes. But yeah, we kind of dove into some of those higher level individuals. And then that's when we found Arate, right?
Yeah.
It's just through research and being well, how can we be better, and growing our team, and how do we get this business to the next level and the next level. And the crazy thing is we went from a middle of the road, low end 6-figure business and struggling for 5-6 years to year 7 and 8, hitting 7 figures. It was a light switch.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. Right. And it was supposed to happen that way, that we had to learn these hard lessons first before we actually got into okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Because at the end of the day, the more you work on yourself, the better team you're going to have. So it was just a solid stepping off point. And the fact that we have some results from working on ourselves is just we're never going to stop now.
No, it's proof. It's proof that like that manifestation we talked at the beginning, it actually works. That visualization, all the stuff that they talk about and you learn about, it's like, it actually works. You know what? Skeptical when you first start any of this stuff, right? You're always skeptical about information, and
it's the ego getting
it's a natural thing to be skeptical about the world and what it actually is going on. But constantly learning and educating ourselves is now like way more vital to our growth as people and our community and what we can provide to them, but our people too that work with us.
That's so good. So obviously a tip would be, if you guys are listening, you're starting out a business, do personal development faster, and you go faster. It'll be better for you in the long run, but also give it that time. So 5-6 years, mine was around that too. Like 5-6 years, there's something to be said about staying. I don't know I forget what the percentages of people that quit in the first year and then people that quit in the 5th year, like they're massive. Making it past 5 years is where like most people don't. I don't know I forget what the percentage is, but it's like pretty minuscule. And that's where your business has started to change. And most people just didn't stick around to see the fruit of all the hard work. And that's, so like, stick around. You're starting a business and it's hard. Stick around and keep doing the work, keep grinding, keep doing the hustle and all the stuff, because it does pay off. And I think that's really important for people to kind of listen into. And they're still, they're still happily married. So this is a good sign too. So what do you see? What do you see as your vision for the next 5 or 10 years? Where do you want to take this?
Oh, geez. This is my wheelhouse.
I'm like, this is Clint's wheelhouse.
So yeah, I got the visionary stuff. Robyn has to go back and help me go back 5 years all the time anyways.
I have plans.
For the business, we really want to inspire artisans who are really good at their craft to learn how to market and build their own businesses. So our goal is to build a facility that is not only like an incubator for those people who are amazing artisans and they're almost like introverted too far, where they're like afraid to put their self out there and promote their product, or they don't understand how to do it. Because I have like a couple of family members that are amazing carpenters, like, but they can't operate a business because of the people. So they're not really good with people and individuals, but they're amazing at what they do. But I think for us, is like, that's the vision, is we want to build a building, one, in order to grow our business, promote what we do, kind of like we call it the modern and rustic. So we bring in reclaimed materials and new materials and kind of cross mix them and like integrate them in different products, bringing that together. And then having people come in and learn how to use some of the equipment and what they can do, and learn about scale and leadership, and have like a place to do recording podcasts and info sessions and YouTube for like their business. Cause a lot of people want the information, and YouTube's huge, right? For that, just to be like, oh, how do I build this? Or how do I fix a faucet or whatever? Because plumbers can go and be like, hey, this is how you can do it without having to be charged $300 for me to come out and do it. And they can create a lot of value for their own brand, because a lot of people just don't want to do it anyway. So they'll hire them anyhow because they're like, oh, this guy's an expert. So we want to do that within that kind of community of artisans and tradespeople. And that's kind of the big 5-year plan for Two Birds. And then for Business Life, we've got the schedule. So we have our book, Business Life of Husband Wife, and our podcast, the same name, Business Life of Husband Wife, which you can find on all the platforms.
And all the bookstores.
Audible
coming soon.
Yes.
Clint's just working on his collection.
I love it.
Working on it over. For that side of our business and the personal development side, we have a goal of writing 3 books in the next 5 years. So the second book's in progress right now. It'll be out in 2023. We want to do 3 years of podcasts, and we're going to see where that takes us. So that's the next 3 years of this business, and just see what happens with it. Right? There's no end game to it. There's no financial gain. It's just, what can we learn and how can we develop from the people that we interview, from what we write down. So that's the 3 and the 5 year.
Yeah. That's cool. You summed it up pretty good. Like, I wouldn't add anything.
I love it. Those are amazing goals. So in wrapping up, we have 3 final questions I always ask, and then anything that we didn't touch on that we should have touched on maybe. So first final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, everyone's always talking about finding their purpose. What's one sentence you would say that could help them find their purpose?
Oh gosh, way to put us on the spot.
One sentence
to help
sentence each.
Oh,
Mine is going to be honest with yourself.
I would say always look inward and then project those positive outlook onto your community and people around you, right? Like try to always take the positive away from everything to find, because positivity spreads positivity. So to me, that's purpose right there. Is that you want a positive world, so project positivity.
I love it. Number 2 is, what is a favorite quote and why?
We have a whole bunch of funny ones in the shop. Like,
so many inappropriate.
So we have a shirt, and I'm just going to do this. And we have a shirt at the shop, and it just says, "Nobody cares, work harder." But I'm big on words of affirmation. So I'll give you my favorite quote. It's on my arms, and I've got it tattooed on both my arms. And it's just for me to remind myself that, and it says, "Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die." So it's just about, are you willing to put the work in and the effort in to get to the point you want to be? And for me, that's my quote, is everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And I take it a little bit differently. Like I don't take it to the morbid level. I just take it to the level that if I want to get to a place of like being where I think I should be and being who I should be and providing value to our little community or our world or whatever we're trying to do, that I need to put the work in on myself.
Interesting. Okay. Mine isn't really a quote. It's just something that I tell myself often because I have a personality that is based on efficiency. So sometimes I can skip things. So mine is details equal dreams. So what it is just it's a solid reminder for me to go back and make sure that all of the background details and everything are covered, because at the end of the day, the details are what matter.
It's a good quote. It's Robyn's new quote. You've started your own quote. I like it. Details equal dreams. Number 3, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Awesome.
I like it.
No hesitation there.
Oh, just awesome, hey?
Awesome.
She said one word.
One word.
One word or sentence.
Or sentence.
But awesome works.
I've never actually thought about this. So that's a tough one for me because I don't actually know what I'd want to put on there.
Awesome too.
No, he wouldn't like that because it would sound like mine. And he's like, I need to be different and better.
More awesome.
More awesome.
I think we'll just go back to the positivity thing, because for me, that's huge. When you got positivity, it's just, spread positivity to the world. I think that's
a good one.
Would be what I'd want on there. It's just constantly spread positivity to the world.
I love it. That's awesome. If you run into anyone that listened to this and they said, yeah, it was really awesome, I love it, was there something that we didn't touch on that you just think would be really important for our listeners?
I think there's a few tests that for people, if you're a couple in business or you're looking for a spouse, when you're in the dating scene, maybe interview them a little bit.
I've got my pen and paper out. Let's go.
Write that down.
But you want to interview them for like-minded goals and values, right? I think that's one. And then once you've found somebody, you might not always agree on everything, but make sure there's a few tests that we have that we kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
We took a SWOT analysis and did it on ourselves instead of on a business or on a marketing plan. We did it on ourselves and just were able to actually talk to one another about what we found. Okay. We check the ego, check all the stuff, write down what you're good at, what your weaknesses are, what you think you have, are your threats from your personality, and what are your opportunities. And then talk about that. I think that's something that we find that was incredibly beneficial for us to be able to I do this because of this, and Robyn does this because of this thing. Why? And then we can analyze that why. Mm-hmm. And we were able to talk, and then you just sit down and just talk about it. Right. Because you're in that headspace to talk about it because you've actually analyzed what you need to work on, or what you think how you can both grow, or who you need to hire. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's two of you and you're really good at one thing and the other person's really good at another, but the third thing is what you're missing.
You're both weak at, or
right. So that's where you can look into where you hire and who you need in your life to help you get better.
I love that. That's awesome. I wasn't going to touch on that. I was like, is that my first date? Like, hey, we're going to go through this questionnaire. Anyway.
Just a quick SWOT analysis here.
Some quick questions here. Can you just fill this out? I'll just wait here. I'll be having a coffee in the corner.
Speed dating questions.
Yeah, speed date questions.
I love it. So awesome. Well, I really appreciate your guys' time. All the links will be in the bio. So guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, follow this amazing couple, check out their podcast, check out their books. It'll all be in the links. As always, let's go out and let's change one starfish or one person at a time. And together we can change the world. Thank you guys.
Thanks, you, Angela. It's a pleasure.
It was amazing.
You're awesome. You're an amazing person. Your podcast is great. Your personality, your aura is awesome. We love hanging out with you. So keep it up.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
See ya.